Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Elite Coaching Blueprint podcast. On today's episode, we are going to be talking about why your content isn't getting you clients and how you can fix it. And today we're joined by Mr. Stephen Taylor, who is a fitness videographer. He works with fitness brands, fitness coaches, fitness projects, you name it. He's done projects with Gymshark, Lululemon, Giants Live, Rogue Invitational. So he has got a very good set of projects behind him, and he knows what he's talking about when we come to videography. In fact, Stephen helps me film a lot of the content that you see on our page as well. The stuff that is better edited, looks better, crisper camera, all that sort of stuff is usually down to Stephen and his input. So today, let's talk about this. Let's go through the content side of things when it comes to coaches and how you can grow your business through using content. Because I think a lot of coaches that we see nowadays do really struggle with this. The game has changed. The bar to entry is so much lower. And that means that people who have some sort of creativity or are really good at, creating certain types of content can really easily come into the game and create really, really high-end content off the back of almost no training whatsoever. I also think for some of us, if you're born pre-2000, you are probably at a disadvantage because we have not grown up in an age where social media content has been the way that it is. And nowadays, people coming through, it sounds awful that I'm saying people who are younger. Like it sounds like I'm some kind of geriatric old man who's about to keel over. But the people who are kind of younger in the industry do have a benefit in the sense that they are coming at this with a lot of like inherent, just kind of baked in experience. It's kind of like when you go see your grandparents and you have to teach them how to turn the TV on and change channels. The younger generations coming into content creation nowadays just have this kind of baked in sense of what works and what doesn't work. And I think that is a big part of what is to play here. So let's go through this, Stephen. I think this is, well, first of all, we've got a very kind of Star Wars, good, dark side, light side going on here.
It does look like that, doesn't it?
Yeah. What is it for you that you see when you're working with these brands and you're working with coaches? I mean, more specifically, let's try and gear this towards coaches today, although fitness brands in general, this relies on the same kind of concepts. What is it that you see that they are maybe doing wrong? What is the sort of thing that is a barrier for a lot of coaches when it comes to content creation and that content actually leading to new customers and clients coming into the business?
Yeah, I mean, I suppose you could go for a multitude of different things, couldn't you? Like, obviously we can talk about quality of like how good your footage looks like and how good your audio is, but actually I feel like there's a much deeper level to it, and it's almost like having like a content strategy, and that could come under a multitude of different things. Like, how often are you posting? What exactly are you posting? Who are you reaching out to in terms of your audience? And are you sort of doing any general like call to actions? Like, what is the purpose of all the content that you're filming? Like, obviously any Tom, Dick and Harry can, chuck a photo up on Instagram and that's, you can call it content and you can call it social media content, but really is there like an underlining strategy to that piece of content that you're putting out there? So I think when it comes to what people might be doing wrong, if they're, if we're sort of talking about, okay, well, what are they doing wrong? Or what are they, do they have any direction with their content? Are they doing actually necessarily anything like going towards that deeper rooted bit of content, if that makes sense? So like, for instance, if you're posting a workout video or a gym workout video and it's just you, like what is, and there's no audio behind it or anything like that, that in essence, it could be valuable for some people and some people like that, but is that actually a piece of content that's going to generate you leads and generate you sales? Whereas you could get some other piece of content where you do a sort of a similar thing where you create that content of your gym routine. But like, I think like you always say, Jack, like, solving a problem for some people is always something that really helps. So yeah, I feel like there's so many different routes that you could go down of like, okay, well, what is a client or what is a person doing wrong? But that could be one thing for example.
The purpose side of things. Yeah, I think what you're saying there about the kind of angle of like, why is this person creating this piece of content? What is it there for? Because you're right. I see this very often, and this is usually people who are kind of maybe earlier on in the industry or they've never really learned how to create content, which is, it's a skill in itself. When you go from being a personal trainer to an online coach, you are going from someone who's employed to someone who is running a business. And running a business nowadays involves having every skill under the sun. You have to be a content creator, a marketer, an email copywriter. You have to be, production team. You have to be a coach, a therapist. You have to be a nutrition, like everything. You've got all of those kind of hats to wear. And content creation is a tricky one because it's so subjective in a lot of ways. You'll hear 10 different content coaches or, branding coaches say 10 different things. And you're like, oh my God, what do I do? Or they'll all say the same thing. And you kind of think, right, this is definitely the way forwards. And then 2 months later, it changes. And I think how we look at this, what we've kind of stepped into now is, like I said, with the bar being a very kind of low bar to entry, you mentioned this as well, was, the quality of the camera and stuff like that. First of all, an iPhone nowadays, this is an iPhone 14. I'm not going to be upgrading this anytime soon, but this is more than good enough to put out very, very, very high quality footage on social media. And to be honest, I would say in most scenarios, you'll probably hate me for this, but I would say in most scenarios, just for the casual bit of content, this is probably quite indistinguishable to the average person from a very, high-end camera. Now, does that mean that videography and high-end cameras don't have their place? Absolutely not. They are absolutely fundamental to creating really, really good quality content and stuff that is maybe more evergreen or something that is like a real champion or hero of your content strategy. But when we know that this is something that's so available to us, when we know that I can a couple £100 mic and it be as good as, or very, very, small differences from very, very high end equipment, it then comes down to the user and how that user is creating content. I think the point you're trying to sort of make through this is what we're creating content about is important, but also the strategy that goes into that. So if I am just creating content in the gym and posting my workouts, I see this very often with coaches who get stuck. It is just like, motivational quote in the caption, and it will just be their gym routine. And there's no like value in it in the sense that someone can watch it and go, oh, maybe I should do this. Oh, maybe I should do that. Whereas other coaches are using the same concept, the same video of them training, but they're teaching, they're solving problems through it. They're giving value that is more than just like, here's my workout, go try it. It's like maybe they're going through it and they're talking about intensity in that video. So they show their workout, but they talk about, training close to failure, or they talk about, their views on should you train to failure versus train to reps and reserve. There's almost like this two sides of the industry at the minute where you've got the science-based lifters, and then you got the people who say train to failure, and that's like two people are like arguing it out. It doesn't matter what your viewpoint is, but it matters that you have a viewpoint and you talk about that and you teach and you solve problems through the content that you're creating. How often do you see that with like the brands you're working with?
It obviously is person to person dependent. Like, I guess sort of quite obviously it can quite commonly be people that are just starting out making content. Like, they've been doing some sort of odd bits here and there, but when they feel like, oh, I realize content is like a genuine, legit marketing tool now, where I can pop something on Instagram and I can get instant feedback, and I can get, I think James Smith says it's like the easiest way to market these days, because you're literally outreaching to thousands of people, whereas before, like in our times in the 1800s or whatever, we were people in like the 2000s, whatever, were putting like posters through doors or leaflets through doors and stuff like that. So in terms of like, who these people are, like I say, it's people that really are just sort of just starting out and sort of dipping their toe in and not really sure how to on how to sort of market themselves, or how to get value from themselves. And there's ways you can sort of find that out, and it's quite literally just by, it's probably maybe a bad move to do it for so long, obviously, but just scrolling through Instagram and just seeing like, okay, well, what is Jack doing? What is Jake Deere doing? Another person that obviously we know, like they're clearly putting content every day, but what value are they giving off? What, who are they talking to? And what choice of words are they using? What hooks are they using? And just learn off of the back of that, because it's in essence, I don't feel like there's any real other. There's obviously probably a couple of other ways, but I don't feel like there's any other real ways of doing it other than, number one, doing it, but number two, actually just looking at the people that are doing it really well, and you can take a lot of inspiration from that, I feel like, too.
I think that, the comment around marketing is, I've always viewed this as content is marketing. It's part of your marketing strategy. And when you view content in that way, it changes how you approach it, because I think a lot of people's approach to content is, we'll make a post, give value. And this has been so lost in translation over the years, where give value, I mean, what's value? Like, what do you mean by give value? The reality of the situation is that your content is marketing. And when you treat it like marketing, you treat the content creation process differently, because marketing in essence is selling your thoughts, your opinions, your values, your story, your mission, what you do to someone, to the point to which they want to then go, well, I want to pay you for that. So it's almost like you're handling elements of like a sales call up front. You might handle objection handling in your content. You might handle, selling why your way is the best way. You might handle, hey, here's proof that this works, right? And when you approach content in that way, it changes how you fundamentally do it. So like the stages of what you're doing. I agree that there is a place for us to be able to watch content and learn from it. But I do think that gets dangerous in some places, because I also think the industry as a whole, coaches are just hotboxing themselves with shit content that is out there. And as a result of that, all the coaches are watching other coaches and going, well, what are they doing, what they do, what they do.
Yeah.
And the reality is actually your magic lies in, this is one of those kind of really wanky statements, but it's true. The magic that you have lies in you as an individual and your thoughts and opinions and values and stuff like that. So anyone that we look at who are generally like big brands, big companies, they all stand for something. They all have values, opinions. They all have, things that they agree with and they disagree with, their way of doing things. And I mean, for any coaches listening to this, I think if you thought of your favorite creators in any space, it doesn't even have to be the fitness space. I think if you thought of any of the creators in the spaces that you enjoy watching, you would lean towards people whose content is something that you agree with and you like and you find engaging. And the reasons you find it engaging and that you like it is because this person is sharing their thoughts, their values, their opinions, they're sharing their mission, they're sharing the stuff they're doing. And I think a lot of coaches have fallen into the trap of give more value. And what they interpret that as is, well, value is knowledge. So then people just spam out knowledge at people. Now, I don't know about you, but ChatGPT, Gemini, Claude are like part of my day-to-day life now in terms of how I work and how I articulate things and put together ideas and, I perform on a day-to-day basis. And I think what happens is we've entered this world now where knowledge is not anywhere near as valuable as it was before. I mean, even when we had Google, everything you wanted was available for free. Now, my God, you can get a hyper customized plan, an answer to all of your questions. So when we're going out there and we're just going, here's 5 tips to do this, here's 3 hacks on the hack squat, here's a tip on blah blah, it's just boring. It's just information. You're just slapping people in the face with like really Googleable or ChatGPT-able stuff, and it's got nothing of you. It's got no essence of you. And I think a lot of coaches as well see someone else's video, go to ChatGPT, write me a video script on X, and then it just churns out the most generic shit in the world. And I think this is where we really lean into, like, I would imagine, think about the brands you work with. There's probably some that pop to mind straight away as I'm thinking about this and talking about this, that you think about their mission, their values, what they stand for, what their opinions are. There's, we mentioned Jake there before, someone who's got very strong opinions and says things in a certain way. He doesn't fluff his stuff out and be too soft with things. The way he dictates his videos is very much who he is as a person. The way he talks on videos is very much who he is as a person. It's very direct. There's no fluff. There's no like beating around the bush. It's just like, this is this, very confident on everything that he says. And that shows. And then when people watch it, they engage with it and they come to buy from him. A lot for the longest time when we were working with him, he didn't really have like a marketing strategy he would lean into other than the content he was creating. And all of it was solving problems, showing how he gets results with clients, showing how he does his work, showing the behind the scenes. All of this stuff's the stuff that actually gets people to buy from you. And it's not the stuff that you mentioned before, where it's just like posting your gym workout or like a topless selfie or a photo of your ass. Like, that's not the stuff that connects with people.
Yeah, no, completely bang on there. Like, certainly, like going back to what your earlier point was of like, you can't just always go off of what other people are doing, but you can certainly maybe just start off doing that way. But as you go on and you get more experience, you get more comfortable talking in front of camera, lean into your own ideas and your own beliefs and your own opinions, exactly like Jake does, for example. Like you quite correctly just said, Jake obviously if he's watching this, he'll know, and obviously we know that he's very to the point, even just face to face with people. But I
Yeah.
think that's, but that's really good because it shows off his genuine personality of who he is and what he believes in. And from him just being himself on camera and being that person that I've just talked about, it will attract others that are needing that and that are wanting that. So putting personality into your content of like who you are and what you're about automatically sort of puts a little bit more trust in that individual person or that type of client that you ultimately probably want to be with. Because I think when you do end up putting that content out where you are just your own true self, you'll attract the other people that are like you, but you also probably get along with as well. Like, with Jake, I imagine he's got some clients. Well, obviously he's in the military sort of business now where he's trying to coach ex-forces and current forces. And Jake, in essence, is sort of like, almost that type of like guy where he just like no fluff, just straight to the point. And I think military people specifically really like feed off of that and they like it. So yeah, when you are making content, obviously don't like completely copyright off someone like Jake or someone whoever that that you really like content wise. Put your own personality into it. And I think as you do more and more of it, it will just grow and grow and grow, and you'll eventually sort of find your footing and your place with it. I feel.
Yeah, it's what you're saying there about like who you're attracting as well, the type of person you work with. It's so important. And like earlier days when you grow in your business, it's weird. Like you have to kind of almost take people on because you're like, oh, I want this to grow. I have to take people on. And I actually think it's very beneficial to have clients who are maybe not 100% your ideal client, who are a bit of a problem, who are asking for things that you're a bit like, oh, that's not quite right. I actually think it's really beneficial because it teaches you so much about running a business and coaching people and working with people. I mean, you probably see the same with your videography stuff. Is you probably have clients who you're like, oh, I'm not exactly who I want to work with, but this is a good experience, or this is a good use of my time to kind of, get my foot in the door or whatever it is. But as the business grows, you can't keep doing that forever because you end up just resenting the business and you lose sight of what it is. So it's almost like you have to take on these kind of like fringe cases, but at the same time, still talk to who you ideally want to talk to. So the example you've given there is like, being more direct to the point. If we had a coaching brand, right? Let's say we were starting a coaching brand today and we wanted to attract people who were very, maybe let's say it was someone who were very spiritual. They wanted to talk about Reiki or was it Reiki?
One of them.
They wanted to, their way of training, their way of nutrition is very much looser. It's not so strict and diligent. It wouldn't make sense for me as a coach to be direct in how I'm talking. I would talk more in their language, more how they would be like to be talked to. Yeah. I would have an approach which matches that, and I would share that in my content. I would talk in words that they would use on a day-to-day basis because I want to attract that type of person. I think this is, fundamental to the kind of style of content you're creating and why you create content, the purpose behind it, which maybe we can go into in a moment, is about like, what is the actual like purpose of this piece of content? Why have you made it? But when you talk to the ideal client, right, you might be sitting at home listening to this. If you are just creating content and you're trying to meet everyone where they're at and, you're trying to dilute your message so you're not contrary in any way, you don't have any views that are opposed to their views, you don't, risk upsetting anyone because you say things how you believe it to be true, but when you portray yourself online, you kind of dilute yourself. I always liken this to, if you're trying to get someone drunk, you wouldn't give them watered down, big glass of, water watered down with a shot of vodka in it. You would give them like the strongest vodka you could, and there would be no dilution because it gets people drunk on your message. Whereas if you're diluting it down, you don't really hit a message with anyone. Sure, it's palatable. Sure, it's something that everyone can get along with, a really watered down, vodka drink. You could probably barely even taste it, but that does nothing to get the outcome you want, which is ultimately getting people drunk on your message. You have to be you. You have to be talking to the types of clients you want. And if you find that a lot of your clients are people who you don't want to work with, they're headaches, they're pains in the ass, it stems all the way back to content. Because if I talk about my content, let's say I am running that sort of holistic woo-woo kind of brand, and I talk about really strict diets, rigid diets, meal plans that are just chicken, broccoli, and rice, training to failure. I'm really hardcore. I'm giving off this really gritty aesthetic. It isn't going to match up with the types of people I want to work with. So when people come to me, they're not going to be the brand archetype that I want to work with. They're going to be who I'm talking to in my messaging and my content, right? So what this goes all the way down to is someone a headache. I wrote one of my goals last year was only work with clients I like. Last year, we sacked a bunch of clients who weren't a good culture fit for the ECB. Now, not in a mean way, just like we helped them move on into better places. But ultimately, we had got to a point where I only want to work with clients who I enjoy working with and I can get along with in a lot of senses. And in a lot of my content in the prior year, I'd found that when I was talking to people, I was being I'd fallen into that trap. I'd kind of gone from being more direct in what I wanted to say to being a little bit more like, oh, this is a bit more palatable. Oh, this is a bit more palatable, because it was stuff that got views and likes a little bit more. But as a result, it attracted the wrong types of people. And when they came in, I started working with these people and they were very much not down my street. Like, if you're going to work with me, and like, this is why I'm happy to say this on this video as well. If you're the type of person who whinges about stuff and doesn't help yourself, I've got no time for that. I don't want to work with someone. I'm all like, if someone's got a bad thing happening and they want to have a little complaint or a whine, I'm all for it, right? Have a go. It's quite cathartic in some ways. But then to do nothing and continue to complain about things not changing, I've got no time for that. It's a very victim mode mentality. Whereas if someone comes to me, they have a problem, they go, oh, I'm really pissed off with this and that. And then they go, but what's the plan of action, Jack? How do we approach this? I got time for you. I've got so much time for you because you are someone who is proactive about stuff rather than reactive. You are someone who works towards your goals rather than just letting things just flop over you and you go, oh my God, this is the worst.
100%.
But that comes across in your message, right? So we have to make sure that we're talking to the right type of person, I think. And that's really, really fundamental.
Yeah, I can completely agree. Like, I think, and if you're doing that through your content, like eventually you'll just start attracting those types of people. Obviously, like you said earlier, like I definitely work with clients that it's a bit difficult for me because I actually work with quite a few different people in the fitness space, and from high rocks to strongman to bodybuilders to just sort of general gen pop like PTs maybe and like group sessions. So there isn't a one set thing, but the general rule of thumb for me is that I just enjoy fitness and I enjoy people within that realm, no matter what sort of fitness you're into, because I just like the ethos behind it. Generally, I find, at least, is that the people that are in the fitness space are some of the most happiest. Well, not all the time, but most of the time, they're the happiest people that I work with, because they care about their life, they take care of themselves and stuff. And that's something that I want to inject into my life as well. So, if you want to attract those types of people, whoever that, your ideal client is, you do have to put that through some messaging into your content. And just show off who you are. Like, I think so many people are quite afraid of and I have been previously, and I'm sure you have before, of been afraid to show who they really are online, because it is I've talked about it in a solo podcast I've done for myself, but just about feeling quite vulnerable in your content and putting yourself out there. You're sort of in an age now where everybody's putting themselves out there in front of potentially thousands or millions of people. And you feel quite vulnerable, in real life, in a real life space. That's sort of doing it in public spaces and lecturing people, lecture halls or whatever. But it just so happens that people are viewing it from your phone. So, but I feel like the more you do it and the more reps you put in, like anything, you don't sign up to a gym and automatically get stronger. You have to put the reps in to get stronger. And that's exactly the same thing for your content too.
Yeah, 100%. It's like, like you're saying there as well, the people who are putting themselves across. I remember, for me, it was very much, I wanted to be seen as a certain kind of way back in the day when I was fitness coaching. So I wanted to be seen as very evidence-based, smart. I wanted to be seen as intelligent. I wanted to be seen as an authority in some ways. So I started creating content of how I wanted to be portrayed. And rather than actually being who I was deep down. So a lot of the content that I started making, it just didn't hit in the same way because it was very much manufactured rather than me being myself and, putting my own spin on things. And it was only really like I remember watching videos and, trying to recreate them and remake them. And it, got my reps in terms of making content, but it started to hone in a voice that wasn't mine. And I was just copying other creators. It probably like 3 or 4 people who I was just like, oh yeah, that's a good video. I'll make my own one of that.
Yeah.
And actually afterwards, it was just, I'd done their video, but I'd done it really shittly because it was their video. And it was only when I started to lean into my own personality a little bit more that I found that I started to find my voice. And that was me kind of like, I would say I'm fairly dry humor in certain spaces, but I also enjoy like a stupid, silly meme. And I used to start like making, meme content where around fitness and kind of educational, and it was like infotainment stuff. And when I started doing that, people started connecting with me more. So I always remember when the Will Smith slap, was it Chris Rock he slapped?
Yeah, that's
Chris
the one.
Rock, wasn't it?
That memorable moment.
Yeah, when he did that, the day of that happening, I had probably about, I'd say maybe like 5 or 6 or 7 or 8 like messages come through from people just saying, I'm waiting for your, I remember my friend Matt James messaged me. He said like, I'm waiting for your version of like, what's your spin? What's your like version of this? And I was like, like people enjoy this. And that's when I learned into it. So I do think like getting those reps in is really important, like you say, because otherwise you find it really, really difficult. What kind of advice you got for when people want to put their personality across? If they kind of struggle to do this a little bit, what have you found are some simple methods to maybe start to put that across in easy ways? Or where could someone start if they feel like what they create is very placid, it's not truly them? What's the first thing they can do?
I think it's going to be definitely person to person dependent, because I work with so many people that, for instance, they really prefer to just go, stick to the script and word for word. But then I have other people that like to go off the cuff, and sometimes people like to go in between that as well. I think it's so difficult because, you like I said, you'll have one person that'll go off script, and that's their best way to show off their personality, because a bit like what we're doing now in this podcast, and obviously we can talk about long form stuff, I'm sure, in a bit. This is who I am. Like, obviously, I don't always typically have a lighting and a decent camera in front of me, and obviously people know that. But it's I am just sort of being who I am, talking to you, and like I say, a lot of people just prefer to do that. That works, only up until a certain extent, I feel like, because sometimes, like we were saying earlier, your content ultimately does need that strategy of like, okay, well, you can talk off the cuff and you can give off your personality, but what's the goal here? What you trying to get across? And it's certainly, like we sort of discussed earlier, it's something that you can definitely start out doing, like, have a few bullet points in your notepad or whatever it might be. Whatever sort of makes it as frictionless for you as possible. Read off those points, start talking about your beliefs, your opinions, etc., and stick with your guns as well. Do you know what I mean? Like, I think sometimes you can sort of shy away a little bit from talking about your opinions, but that ultimately is your personality in a way. Like, you might meet somebody that's like an incredibly opinionated person, but they don't show off that in their content because they're afraid or whatever. But it's really important that you do that. So go on.
I was going to say, what we often find is those opinions, the people with the most strong opinions are usually the most Marmite kind of people, but equally at the same time, those people tend to have really strong followings. Like, if we look at those people, we go, oh my God.
Yeah.
That person's like, the people follow them, the people who don't. And like, an example that might be someone like the Liver King could be a really strong example of that, like really extreme example as well.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, you could even argue to someone like James Smith back in the day. He doesn't really do it so much now, but I remember back when I first started following him, he was like very to the point, call people out on their shit, use the "see you next Tuesday" word quite a lot, but like, that is him. That's who he is.
You can say cunt on this podcast.
Perfect cunt. Yeah, I'll get it out. What a relief. But yeah, it's so true. It's but you sometimes. Do you know what I mean? Like, you're never going to be able to please everybody, and that's something that I struggle with. I think, like, sometimes, I'll probably have a thought in my head after this podcast, potentially thinking like, oh God, should I have said something a bit better? Should I, whatever, what if? But ultimately, like, people will forget about it in about 2 days or probably less time. Like, you got so much shit out there that like, it's gone and forgotten so easily.
you're gonna, if you speak on camera for a living, you're gonna say some stuff that you fuck up and you go,
Yeah.
I said that a bit wrong, or I didn't say that quite in the way I wanted to word it, or I wanted it to come across. That didn't come across. Wasn't the best representation of me.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
ultimately, it's a drop in the ocean. If the majority of the rest of your stuff is like, on brand, on topic, then I think you're okay. You said something there about those kind of opinions and thoughts, and something that we use, this might be useful for listeners, is, when we come into creating personality in your content, we have a process called the threads. So this is personality, story, authority, trend, and unique coaching systems and mechanisms. So personality, this is your views, your opinions, your thoughts, your values. This is the stuff that kind of identifies what you stand for and don't stand for. It could even be your kind of contrarian viewpoints. Now, I want to be careful here. On contrarian viewpoints, people say contrarian viewpoints and they misunderstand contrarian viewpoints to be controversial viewpoints. You should not be controversial for controversy's sake. There's a very big difference between contrarian and controversial. A contrarian viewpoint is something which is, this is my hill to die on, and I don't really care what you think. This is what I think, my values, my opinions. Controversial is usually quite inflammatory. It is something that is maybe risks upsetting people, risks insulting people. And I think there's a very big difference there. Contrarian is it's what makes your views unique to you. And I think that's really, really important. So, a contrarian viewpoint might be something like you believe a certain diet method is actually the best. And to be honest, for me, I would go, I don't really believe that, because I think actually all diets have their place if you know anything about the science and the data. But then that's my viewpoint on this, right? Yeah. But someone else can come in, again, Liver King, carnivore diet. It's the best diet. Maybe there's data to suggest that is the diet, but there's also data that suggests that it isn't. But that's his contrarian viewpoint. But it isn't insulting. It isn't inflammatory in a lot of ways. People do get upset over it because people have, can't take anything nowadays which is against their belief system. They go, oh my God, that doesn't align with me. Oh my God, how insulting. But that is the P from Threads. Personality, your opinions, your thoughts, your values, what you stand for, your contrarian viewpoints, your style of humor, how you talk. All of that makes you, your likes, your interests, your dislikes. Your personality, I think, can be really well summed up. If you're really struggling, go to your YouTube homepage, screenshot it, refresh it, screenshot it, refresh it, screenshot it, refresh it, and then plug that all into an AI, and then write about what you've done this week. Everything. On Monday, I went to work and I do this for work. And then after work, I went and played football. And then after the football match we had, or training I then went and got some burgers at, Five Guys, and I came home and we watched, Breaking Bad for the third rerun. And then Tuesday we got up and I actually had I sing in a choir, so we went to do that. Just talk through literally everything you did, from what you watched to what you ate to what you minute by minute. And then say, ask me 5 questions that are going to help you to figure out what my personality is, who I am, what my views, opinions, my stand, what I stand for, all this and that. And it'll ask you some opinions. And off all that information, it will start to generalize things. Because I found this really hard, was what is my personality, right? It's one of those things you don't really ever know. It's just who you are in a lot of senses. It's what is your personality, what you're known for?
And I feel like you change all the time as well, right?
You go to, I don't know if you've ever had conversations with people you went to uni with, but they view you so differently to who you are now. I've got friends who I went to uni with, and they're like, oh, that's so you. And I'm like, actually, no, it's not anymore. Maybe it used to be, but right now it's not, kind of thing. And it does change over time. So Threads, personality, there's that element. You've got story. So the story can be yours or a client's ultimately, and it is storylines. It's past to present or present to future. It is what I did or what my client did to get to where they are now, or it is what I doing now to move to the future, or what am I doing with this client to move to the future state. And that is one of the easiest ones. You can almost wrap that into almost all content. Storyline content's killing it at the minute. And it just shares what you're doing.
Yeah.
A little bit more. Authority, results, talking with authority on points, results, proof. Storyline almost inherently brings that with it. But your authority content can be stuff which is, or sorry, authority thread, something that you weave into your content, can be results and stuff like that, but it can also be your viewpoints and like backing up what you say with knowledge, with experience, with expertise. That is authoritative. You speaking with something. Again, we'll go back to Jake as an example. Even if some of the stuff he says is objectively wrong, right? There's been some videos he's made in the past where I'm like, I don't agree with that like thing on nutrition, but he just says it with authority. Some
Yeah.
people will agree with it, some people won't, you know, and I'm sure he could find stuff that would disagree with why I disagree with it, right?
Yeah.
But it's not the point. There's authority in how you say things. It's like, this is this. That's what it is. And it's also backing up what you say you can do. Ultimately, it's like, hey, I'm not just talking the talk, I'm walking the walk.
Yeah.
I also think authority comes with you living proof of what you're doing. So you don't just say, oh, you should do this. It's like, if you talk about meal prep all the time, you better fucking be posting your meal prep every Sunday, your meal prep session on your Instagram story. If you talk about, you know, hardcore like work ethic, you better be showing that off in your posts and your content, what you're doing. And I think that comes with the authority as well, as like you live what you say. Then we have what have we gone through? Personality, story, authority. We have trends. So trends are social media trends, but also what's going on in the world right now, what's present. If we go back to the Chris Rock, Will Smith slap, that was something that was trending because it was news at the moment. So something that's trending right now doesn't have to be, I think people take this as like a social media trend. It doesn't. It can be news and like things that are happening in the world of something you are watching right now. So right at the minute, like there's, you know, in jiu-jitsu, there's a couple of scandals that are happening with like, you know, allegations against certain people. I don't even know what's happening, but I've seen the kind of, you know, periphery of people reacting to it. And I'm like, what on earth's happening here? But that's something that's trending right now and people are talking about it and being current with it. That also comes back to kind of like the authority. It comes back to the storyline. It all sort of trends together and the personality, it shows your viewpoint on this news story. Because if you're talking about something that's happening right now and giving your opinion, you're almost like the news anchor to your audience. You're like, hey, this thing's happening and here's why this is good or why this is bad. Here's why this thing is positive, why this thing is negative. Here's what I think about this and what I think you should do off the back of it. It's kind of acting with confidence on it. And then the last one is unique coaching systems and mechanisms. Hard to map out on this because this is something we work with clients, of course, but your unique coaching system mechanisms are but basically, how do you get a result with people? Perfect example could be something like P90X, right? They had like muscle confusion. Now, a lot of us know muscle confusion is a load of bollocks, but regardless of that, it was very good marketing from their point of view because it was their unique system to get results. Reality was that they just switched your workouts up every 90 days.
To confuse the muscles.
Yeah, it was like high intensity work and it wasn't really like that groundbreaking, but that's a really unique system that you can use for putting your personality across, is using those threads. I think is probably like a fundamental part of it. When you come to, you say about scripting and talking off the cuff a little bit. If you had two coaches in front of you, one right now is like, I love a script, I want to follow it. The other one is someone who maybe is a little bit more like, I like to go off the cuff a little bit. What's your advice from the people you've worked with when it comes to actually creating a piece of content, when it comes to scripting for maybe both those coaches in those two camps? How can they best go about that practice or content creation scripting process?
Scripting specifically, like if we maybe go
if
scripting,
we just hone in onto like the script. Yeah.
I mean, it's such like another art form in itself. Like there's a reason why, you know, if you go to big budget feature films or TV shows, that, you know, you have actual writers and stuff like that. So it's such a massive art on its own. But with social media specifically, in terms of the way you craft it, like you obviously, I think most people will know this, but for the people who don't, 9 times out of 10 with a video, you start off with what is called a hook. You know, and that could be, you know, a multitude of things. Obviously, we're talking in the fitness space. I think I even remember ones that's just come to mind that you've sort of like given an idea. One is that, like, I used to have like tiny little noodle arms, and this is 3 ways that I was able to build my arms to 3 times the size or whatever it might be. It's almost like, you know, just piquing somebody's interest, because sort of once you've got that interest, obviously you can't go off to just say random shite, but it's sort of like piquing that interest, because then once you piqued somebody's interest, they want to listen to the rest of what you have to say, because they think, okay, well, I have this issue. I've got absolutely the skinniest arms known to man. I want to build some muscle and I have this problem. So I'm going to listen to this person regardless of what he says. And obviously, if you're a good person out there, you'll actually give some solid advice. But, if you give solid advice, then, you potentially got yourself another client there as well. So it's just about piquing that interest at the beginning, and you could go into absolute hours about talking about different types of hooks, etc. But that is the sort of fundamental way. If people like to go off script, at least get that first hook out the way, because from there you can essentially talk about what you know. You are the expert at the end of the day. You're the coach. You do this, probably day in, day out. So once you have that interest, you can pretty much go into say what you already know. And in a way as well, like I suppose touching back onto what we said earlier, that, if you're talking about what you know and you're going off the cuff, it probably shares your personality a little bit more as well. So it could be the best of both worlds, but it's so individual. And it could go a multitude of different ways.
I think the scripting side of things, and like even just starting off with the hook, I think that is out of all of the stuff you're going to script, even if you are someone who goes off the cuff, just spend a bit of time on that, because that is the bit that gets someone to go, am I going to watch this or just scroll straight past it? If you can get someone's interest, you've at least got their attention. And then I think the second side of it is like, do you go down the route to scripting or not? I can speak at length off the cuff, right? I can just, you could go, here's your topic, here's where you're at. And I think anyone who does a job professionally is going to be able to do that, because ultimately we're experts at what we do. So I can, no preparation, go, oh, well, let's talk about this topic for 2 hours with ease.
Yeah.
But I think what happens there is actually you've got two types of people. And this is where, although I can do that, and I have that skill set, I have the ability to waffle if I need, that actually has its downsides, in the sense that if I can just speak at length about something, I probably know all the ins and outs, the ups and downs, the inside out, the back to front. And I probably also think with a lot of the caveats around something, and all the like, well, there's a bit of nuance, this and that. And that's great. And it works for stuff like long form content where we can go, well, let's explore all these avenues. But ultimately in short form content, it shouldn't be that way. You need to be directing towards like 1 point, 1 solution kind of thing, 1 problem, 1 solution. And where I've found, like even when we've been filming, where I've done the scripts and then I've kind of come back and watched them afterwards, the stuff that I'm not happy with usually is not it. Well, always, it's never the quality of what you've done or what you filmed or anything like that. The thing that I'm not happy with is what I've scripted and what I've put together in that process. Afterwards, I look back and I go, that's so clunky. I could have said that in so many better ways. And it's not even like the edit could have saved it. It's because I just didn't script properly enough in the first place. So even if you're someone who can, like me, go off the cuff, I think the scripting process is so vital. I would encourage people to do it, unless you are just like someone like an Alex Hormozy. He is just someone who can very clearly, very concisely get a problem solved and just give you the exact, he's got as many words as you need, but as little words as possible. He's just got the sweet spot. He just goes, ba, 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 ba. And then you're like, wow, that is like as clear as it could be, and I've got everything I need from it. If you're a bit of a waffler like me, you need that structure to keep you on point. And I think wherever we've been filming, I like the balance of having the script, but then if I feel like in the moment I could say it in a better way, then I can lean into it. So I think from my opinion, I would say scripting from what I've seen is better. And I think also, if we're looking at coaches, I know you've spoken to me about this before. It is a pain in the ass for you when you show up to a shoot and they're like, right, okay, I want to do a video maybe about, and you're like, oh, you've not even prepped. You've done nothing. So from your point of view, it's not good. But also, how are you, like, you wouldn't show up, like you say, feature length films and TV shows. You're not fucking showing up to that and going, right, well, what are we filming today, lads? You'd be like, what? You'd be like, what's the storyboard? What are we doing? What are we setting up? And that's the content that I think when coaches watch them, it's that little bit of extra effort that's why they're watching it. That's why they're, the shot 1 goes into shot 2 and you're using this transition and I'm going to deliver this line. And that's the stuff that really gets you to engage, because it shows that you've really, it's like art, right?
Yeah, exactly.
You've thought about the process more.
Yeah, 100%. Like in essence, you to make a shoot or if even not with just a videographer, but with just yourself, and obviously you can like have a bit of flexibility here and there, but you should have, if it should basically be in a place where you've planned it to a T, where filming it and talking about it is so fucking easy. Like, I think, again, we don't want to go on about feature length films, but it's, feature length films don't just happen to just show up one day with a camera and a set and film. There's so much preamble that goes into it. We call it pre-production, and it's the same. You put it into, if you've had one of your like group like ECB days where you've like put in some time of, okay, well, what in this sort of like talk that I'm giving in this sort of day, what is the goal of it? What am I going to talk about? And it's the exact same thing when it comes to your content, because, like we said, any person could just show up and talk to the camera and waffle off a few different points. But if you actually have something specific that it might be somebody that has come to this question come with a question before about like, okay, well, how do I really want to lose weight? What are the best, like, what's the best, like, food or nutrition plan or whatever it might be for me to be able to lose weight effectively in this space amount of time? Do you know what I mean? Like, you could then make a piece of content about that. It's repeating what we've already just talked about, I guess, but solving basically talking about a problem and solving it for them, and that in essence gives us hundreds amounts of value.
Yeah, I think, like you're saying there as well, like feature length films, they are good examples, because if they showed up and just pointed at the camera, was like, let's wing it, it's be a shit film, no one's watching that. And for a lot of coaches is, okay, you're not making a feature length film, but you want to make the best content you can make. And I think what happens a lot of the time, there's a few things that I think are happening, but I think what happens a lot of the time, first of all, is that people are going in with no prep, or just like, oh, I'm going to make a video about like maybe this thing, and that's it. That's all the prep they've done, or they've seen someone else do something, like, oh, I'll make that one. And as a result of that, it shows in the quality. So yes, you're not making a feature length film, but you're making content to market your business. And as a result of that, you want the content to stand out. You don't want it to be one of the fluff movies that you go, I'm not watching that on Netflix, and you skip past and you go, God, there's fucking nothing good on Netflix nowadays. You want the one that everyone's going, oh my God, have you seen blah, blah? And they're like, oh man, it's so good. That's the one you want to create. So when it comes to your content, you're not competing against feature length films. You're competing against people who take content creation seriously. And I think that's the big thing here, is everyone's looking for, this is a mistake I fell down for a long time, and for a very long time actually, was I wanted content creation to be quicker and quicker and quicker. And it's kind of like with check-ins as well. I had the same issue with check-ins. I was like, how can I make this quicker and faster? Because it used to take me all day, like all day long and into a second day. And I realized, these check-ins are what get my clients results. This is what allows me to show up and get the fucking unbelievable results I do. And by cutting it, this is where all the coaching is happening. This is where the magic is happening, that's getting the results that are getting people coming to me going, oh my God, like, can I work with you? Yeah. And it's the same with the content, is the stuff that stands out, the stuff that you enjoy watching as a coach, is usually stuff that has taken a lot of effort. So someone like, I've used Sam C. Forth, if anyone's watched his stuff, he does like comedy videos. And I think a lot of it he films, from what I've heard, is on an iPhone. So it's not even like he's got this crazy camera setup and this and that, but he puts effort into his content. He thinks about the transitions. He thinks about the pacing. He thinks about the script. He goes outside his house to film and goes to different locations. He'll get outfits and get other people involved. And that process adds to the value of the content, and it takes it to that next level. It really stands out when you think about his content, because it is something that is like really unique, and a lot of people aren't doing that. And I think there's this kind of other side of it as well, where the content creation that we're seeing nowadays, like people are talking about personal brand and like more raw stuff. And part of me thinks like it's that whole thing of where you go, well, when they zig, we zag. Should you be leaning into more effortful content here and there, where it does stand out more? Because I think actually so many people are going to go down this like lazy route of content. We'll probably have a year or two of just this like pick up like into it, which is great. It's raw, it's off the cuff, it shows off your personality, it shows off your ability to talk on a topic. And I think we're so coming off the back of this like high production, retention editing, this has now become the next winner. But I think it's only going to swing back the other way. I think we're just constantly swinging back and forth. And
100%.
It's that process that goes into the content creation, which really makes it the standout stuff, like the stuff you've done. How often, I don't think you ever show up to a shoot and go, I don't know what I'm filming. You show up and you're like,
Yeah.
right, I've got 5 videos. Like when we were filming the other day, you
Yeah.
texted me
Yeah.
like before, are we filming any overhead stuff? Because you need to
Yeah.
know that, because
Yeah.
if you don't have that, we can't get the overhead shots of the iPad and the drawing and this and that.
Yeah. Yeah. It just needs to be preps. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Exactly.
it's a planning process. Let's talk about very quickly, because we've kind of, this was actually what we started talking about. We segued a little bit off topic, but the purpose behind the, I think this is a really important concept here, is why are you making this video? Like what there to do? Talk to us a bit about what you see or kind of feel from what you've worked with on people with this kind of stuff. Like maybe, have you seen a difference between coaches who are just creating content for content's sake and then coaches who are creating it with, oh, this video has XYZ purpose?
Yeah, it's. I work with a good few different clients, and like I sort of said earlier, some people like to be off script, some to like to be script, and you can sort of do both, and you can sort of have a purpose for both of them. Like that's absolutely fine. And 9 times out of 10, you're pretty much like maybe even just 99% of the time that people always do come prepared with their scripts, with their planning in place and stuff like that. In terms of what I notice is that the people who do really well just have a really like thought out and sense of like I know who I'm trying to help here, and they sort of know it. I think based off of like just their everyday work life, like the people that they speak to. I imagine you, for example, like, you know, the amount of WhatsApp messages you get maybe per day or per week or whatever it might be with people's problems and issues, you know, in essence, all you might have to do sometimes is like look at your own FAQ on your website or your Instagram and think, well, let me make a piece of content about that, because you're solving issues at the end of the day. And those issues tend to be like just solved in a matter of, you know, 60 seconds, and you can really narrow it down and dumb it down for people that is so easy digestible. You know, it's such a overlooked thing sometimes, I feel like, and maybe not often people don't do it. But, you know, I feel like as well, I think we've talked about this before, but obviously offline, but I think it's so subjective of like, okay, even if you have thought about it really well and thought about it really deeply of like, okay, what purpose am I, what is the purpose of me creating this content? Who am I aiming towards? It can still flop, but that's okay. Like, and obviously flopping is subjective as well, because you could get 3 likes on a video that you spent fucking 2 hours doing, but doesn't necessarily mean that it has flopped. Like, it will still reach that person that you are trying to help. And you know, I like to think of it as like just, you know, content. Each piece of content you do is just a brick, and brick by brick by brick, eventually to build you a house. And, you know, some will do really well, some will do absolutely shite, but it still all matters. Like it, and you know, it eventually gets you to where you need to be, because you could put a viral video out and it does incredible, but that's the only video you have out on your page. Who's trusting that? Like, do you know what I mean? Like, and also, do you know what I mean? No one's going to buy from you from just that one viral video where it might be like, you know, Will Smith class slapping Chris Rock, or whatever. It's the culmination of all of them. So the people that I guess, maybe to answer your question off this random, like off the cuff thing, but it's the people that essentially are consistently just showing up as well. You know, it's purposeful content, but they don't let the content that doesn't do, you know, vanity wise well, and they don't let that like sway them. They still focus. They think, okay, what didn't work about that piece of content? You know, you learn so much from, as you do more and more content. I'm still learning. I'm sure you are too, because it's such like an ever changing game, but it's a hard game as well. Like it's you know, and you should never be demotivated when something doesn't do as you know, vanity as well as you thought of. It does all add up. It does all get there in the end, I feel like.
Yeah, I think there's like, I think a lot of coaches are like whores for engagement, if I'm honest. And this is where that kind of content purpose conversation comes around, because you can create a viral piece of content are quite easy to make.
Yeah.
if I'm being really honest about it. And you might, like, if people look at my page, they go, well, what are you on about? Like, you haven't got any viral piece of content. Yeah, because I'm not making viral piece of content. And a big shift I've had over the last few years is stop caring about views, likes, and engagement, and more focusing on, well, what's the purpose of this content? Is this content here to attract people? Is it here to build trust and value? Or is it here to convert someone? Is it a sales piece of content? And that content's never going to go viral. You know, if you put a before and after up, it's never going to go viral unless you've coached someone like, you know, Kim Kardashian. It's just not going to pop off, and it's just not going to show off in the same way. So the purpose of the content is really, really important because it changes how you view stuff. Sales content isn't going to go viral. Content that talks about your program and what you do isn't going to go viral, but it connects with the right type of person. You know, we've given, you know, Sam Grover, for example, the last few videos that we've sent across to, like every now and then I'll just send him, I see a video and I go, this would be perfect for Sam. And I send an idea over to him and he makes it. Like one of them got up to like 1.5 million views or something. It was something about strength and having, like, the stronger you are, the smaller the penis size.
Yeah, it's like the bench. Yeah, I know exactly which one you're on about. Yeah.
But that went like mega viral. It was great, but it doesn't do much for you in terms of sales. So you have to kind of have this balance. It doesn't mean that you don't create content which can go more viral and get more views, but you have to do it in balance. And I think where coaches get really stuck is they either create, you've got 3 layers of your funnel: top of funnel, attract people in; middle of funnel, build trust, likability, get people to know you, your way, your values, what you do, what you stand for, what you're against, all that sort of stuff. This is where they build a connection with you and actually go, do I want to work with this person or not? And they see what you do, they see what your program is. And then you have bottom of funnel, which is selling content. And where we see coaches are typically stuck is they are either doing just one of these. Like some coaches, all they post is attraction content, stuff that gets them likes, views, and engagement. And they go, why can't I sell? And I'm like, because all you do is you just entertain people. You've not got any substance here that kind of gets them to want to work with you. And yeah, like if you get enough views, you're probably going to get some people trickle through.
Yeah, if your goal is ultimately to become a content creator and want to get paid for brand ads, then fair play. That's 100% what you should be doing. But if you're trying to make sales and coaching, then it's not the way to go.
You can't do that. You can't rely on that. And it's the same with the other stuff. Like if you just, the way I imagine this, right? Imagine you got a pond, okay? If I create attraction content, it's like me putting baby little fish in the pond and they're swimming around. Well, I don't really want to fish and catch the baby fish because it's not going to be a good meal for me. And fishing and catching the fish is like making a sale. So what do I need to do? I need to get that fish to grow and be bigger and basically be a good catch. That's where that middle of funnel content comes in. That's where I feed it food and nutrients and give it, you know, all the stuff it needs to grow to this big, you know, plump, juicy fish that I'm like, right, I'm gonna catch that. And then your sales content is you putting the hook in the water and trying to catch something off the back of it. If all you do is put new fish into the pond and don't actually feed them, you just end up with this dead, half dead fish, like pond of fish that aren't really engaged. It's a very subprime audience. They don't really care about you, what you do. They're just like, oh, it's entertaining, but that's it. If you only feed your fish, you just end up with these really like overly fat fish, but you haven't done anything to, like, they're ready to buy from you and you don't get them, you don't do anything to get them to buy from you. And then if all you do is sell, great, but now you've caught all the fish. If you haven't put new fish in the pond and plant them up, there's nothing else to catch here. So you need this full ecosystem of your content. And when it comes to the purpose of your content, that decision behind what is this individual post doing, but also what is it doing in the wider context of what I'm trying to do here? Am I trying to bring people in? Am I trying to nurture them or trying to sell to them? And I think knowing that, you know, if you've come off the back of a launch, for example, you've just sold really hard. Don't go into more selling content. Go into stuff that is bringing new people in and nurturing that audience. If you've got a launch coming up, maybe you want to keep nurturing that audience because you know that, okay, cool, in a couple of weeks, I'm going to be selling stuff. I'm going to be asking people to join me. So it's constantly this kind of balancing beam of like, where am I at on this funnel? How many people are in here at the top, in the middle, at the bottom? And what can I do to kind of activate them? What can I do to get them into sort of activation energy? I think that's really, really important within how we approach this in here. One of the other things we were talking about before we started today was kind of looking at like the actual setup of content as well. Obviously, you are a videographer. So what you do is like the cream of the crop in terms of like how you can get something to look good. And actually, we're going to do a podcast with yourself as well, where we talk more in depth about this as well. But let's say someone's filming at home, they want to get some better quality footage and, videos and whatever they're creating, they just want it to be of a higher standard than what
Yeah.
they're currently doing. What are your kind of like top tips that allow someone to go, right, I've got an idea here, I want to turn it into a piece of content. How do they go ahead and create that piece of content and make it the best it can be with what they have available at home, or quite cheap to buy but would last them a good period of time?
Yeah, no, 100%. So if someone literally just doesn't know, like, we'll maybe just sort of put it into perspective of like, okay, we're speaking to someone who literally just knows nothing and is starting from the grassroots. Obviously, like you were saying earlier, like you don't really have to buy a camera like I'm using right now, which looks pretty nice. A lot of phones these days, especially Apple iPhones, which ends up being probably the most popular but also most superior phone for camera quality in my view. You can do a lot with that basically, and there's so many things that you can do with that phone to increase the quality, making it 4K, and using cinematic mode if you want this sort of like blurred background and etc. But in essence, like in terms of the way it looks as well, like I think lighting is something that is incredibly overlooked as well. Like, obviously you don't have to spend 100, 200 pounds on a light like I have and a background light, etc. You can
No, I've got
use.
a shitty cheap one here. This is like 50 quid off Amazon.
Yeah,
But, like,
exactly.
just for anyone who's watching this like visually, and if you're not watching it, maybe just open this up for a second to look. Like, this is where I'm at now. This is the lighting quality I have now. If I take this light behind me and just switch it off, it doesn't make a massive difference, but it just brings the vibe down a little bit. Like,
exactly.
There's a difference from that where I'm sat here to
100%
off. And then again, this light, not expensive one. I turn that off if it'll turn off. Hang on a second. I think I've loosened the batteries in it. 1 second. There we go.
Yeah.
That makes a difference, right?
Yeah,
I'm like
100%. Yeah, like, you know what I mean?
Like, even if I had like a really bright like light on my laptop and stuff, and I turn this off,
it's still, do you know what I mean? You're filming in a dark room, like lighting is really important. Like, it's like going back to feature films, like you have like a specific person that makes the lighting good for that film to make it look good. And obviously you can make it look good and the content still be shit, which is another story for a different day. But if you want to improve it, lighting is really important. And literally, if you have a lot of time, or if you've got some time during the daytime, obviously currently as we're filming this, UK doesn't have a lot of daylight during the day, but film near a window, film outside, like, it doesn't have to be a phenomenal and professional setup, but it does make a difference when you have some fairly decent lighting. You can film with a really great camera, but if your lighting's really shit, then, do you know what I mean, it just looks like you're filming with any other phone or camera or whatever it might be. So it is really important. And then it comes to audio as well. Like, again, a lot of iPhones tend to have the fairly decent microphones, but there's also some editing software online or like AI tools as well, where you can increase the quality of your voice. Obviously, if we talk about like going back to the camera stuff, framing as well, like, there's a thing called like the rule of thirds. If we're getting really specific, it's just making sure you have enough space in between you, between your shoulders, between your head, etc. So you're not just sort of like this cropped head that's like, you're filming at the bottom or whatever. Like, all of this, it does come into play. There's a few things you can do to increase the quality, but ultimately I would say number one, just use what you have. You don't have to buy this like incredible equipment. My job as a videographer like just allows me to do that, number one, but also like I would be a social media person if I didn't have like all this gear and stuff like that. It's a bit of a different job. So just using, and also like if they wanted to increase the quality but also they don't have the money, it's just about, like I say, going back to my point, using what you have. I think so many people think, oh, this person's using this camera and this lighting, etc. Let me see if I can buy that. Ends up being over £1,000, whatever, and thinking, okay, fuck, well, and it stops and it prevents them from creating content. In my view, fuck what they're using. Just use what you have, because ultimately it can look great, and obviously it's important to like show up and have standards, but it doesn't have to look exactly like the other person that you're like veering towards. So number one, let's just summarize this point, is use your iPhone if you've got one.
Yep.
Use a window, or go outside for natural daylight. That's probably, you can get really harsh lamps and stuff like that sometimes, and it doesn't look the best. But if you are literally, and you literally only have time to film when it's dark outside, use what you have around you. Use the lights in your room. And then audio, you can obviously look into sort of some fairly cheap mics that might help the quality of your audio, but make sure you do your research, because you can get some really, what is advertised as good mics that end up actually sounding like shit, and you're better off using your iPhone. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I think with the mics side of things, because this is, if I was going to do any one thing, two things: film in front, like if you had like very low budget, film in front of a window, like just so you've got some lighting. The amount of times you look like someone's sitting in the dark and you're like, Jesus Christ. But the second thing is mics. I think if you're going to invest in anything, most of us have 100%. More than decent enough cameras on our phones, but this is the DJI Mic 3. I really like this one, but it is the more recent one, right? If I wanted to buy a cheaper version, you'd probably buy one that's like 60 quid or like 50 quid or something like that.
Yeah, exactly. But they all do the same thing ultimately, but
it's a good brand.
Yeah, 100%. I think, do you know what I mean? Like you've made a very, very solid point there. Like if you're going to invest in anything, and I'd invest in a good microphone. I think your content can look great, but if it sounds like absolute dog shit, it sadly does just put people off. You don't go to a feature length film, or like, you think of your favorite film that you want to see in the cinema or have seen. If you couldn't hear them properly, it will sound scratchy, it was really loud or whatever, you'd probably think like, fuck this, I'm out of here. So I'd say out of everything, audio is probably the one
perfect example list. If you think of the latest Mission Impossible film, there's scenes in that are like in pitch black. Like he's in that I don't know if you've seen it, but he's in that submarine.
Yes,
pitch black. But it is like the music, the sound, everything going on. It is like, holy shit, what's happening? It's so tense of a moment. You can barely tell what's happening half the time. You're like, what the fuck? I remember when we were watching it, the projector wasn't like bright enough or something. I had to go out and say like, no one can see this fucking film in here.
Yeah.
Like, oh, right, okay. So even then, it was like even darker than it was meant to be. And I was just like, what's going on? But it was so tense, and you were getting all this stuff off like the audio of it. It does make a big difference,
massively,
in terms of like what you're looking at there. I think when it comes to that content creation process, and the kind of core things to really take away is, number one, make sure that you know what the purpose of the content is. Like, why are you making this video? Are you just making it for giving value, or are you going, well, this piece of content is here to attract new people into my audience? This piece of content is here to build trust with my audience and solve one of their problems, or build authority with them, or show them proof, or whatever it is. This one is here to sell to them. Like that can be your approach there. The second part is, when it comes to making your content better and actually stand out, you've got all the basics like lighting, like a mic, like getting a better camera if you have to, but you've got all that basic stuff, but it doesn't fundamentally change the fact that someone can film a video in their car and outperform you simply because they are better at the art of scripting and writing and making content than you are. And I think that really, like, sometimes it sims it down, is like, you will create content for hours and then someone just whips their phone out in a car, no mic, no lighting, like everything, and their video does better than you. And you go, great, fucking hell. Actually, what this really comes down to is, well, what goes into the content? What makes this content really, really like juicy and like the best thing that it can be? Well, scripting and the process of content creation, and getting good at writing hooks, and getting good at writing the meat of content and the CTAs, and not making them too long or too waffly, and making sure that you constantly re-engage in the audience, you're creating open loops and all that sort of stuff. But I think what's more important in that is, as we go into this generation now of like AI nonsense and slop, like one of the estimations is that I think, I can't remember if it was end of decade or end of this year, but they're expecting 85% of content online to be generated by AI, which is scary. The value of the human is going to go up. It just is. That's how it's going to be. But if you are not that intriguing to watch, if you are just bland and just like, yeah, okay, then it's not going to stand out, and you're going to be one of the ones who really struggles here. So for you, as a listener, if you were going to do any one thing today, first of all, make sure you film with the lights on so you don't look like you're in a fucking barn. But second of all, put your personality across online. This is where people are talking about personal brand, and I think it can be very confusing. But ultimately, personal brand is what makes you you. What values, what opinions, what like thoughts do you have? Like even coming down to what we were saying about before, where we were saying speak to your audience, not who you think should listen to this or you want to be heard as. Who are you and who are you trying to attract and what do they stand for? If your audience, your ideal client is someone who is no bullshit and wants to be called out on their shit, then talk to people like that.
Yeah.
And if you want to attract people in a different sort of headspace and mindset, then talk to that person. But ultimately, a lot of what makes content creation successful isn't the equipment, isn't the camera, isn't all of that. It comes down to you as the professional. And if you're working with someone like Steven as a videographer, it comes down to like the artist side of things. That's why, certain individuals get paid so much for their craft, even though they've got the same tools. It's because how they approach it and how they do those things is so much more like valuable than someone else. You think of two directors, Steven Spielberg, Steven Spielberg versus, I know, someone else who's a no-namer. Spielberg makes the big money because he has such an artistic flair in what he does, and it's a expression of who he is. Who else he's done all the Kill Bill films? I always forget his name. He's like one of the most famous.
Quentin Tarantino.
Quentin Tarantino.
Yeah.
He talks about this a lot, is the flavor that you create within your art is very much taking all the little different tastes from different areas of your life and creating your own flavor with that. And you see that in his films, certain shots, certain compositions, certain lighting, certain music, certain scores, certain actions, certain wordings. You can literally trace them back to go, oh, this was in a 1832 film. Oh, this was in the 2001 film, this. And he takes all these little things and he combines it to make it unique to him. Because the reality is that nothing you do is 100% unique. It's probably been done before. Other people have those views and opinions, but that's a good thing because other people who correlate with those and believe in those same things are able to connect with you in such a deeper level because you are unique in your own way. So I think that is a huge part of this, is that when it comes down to content creation and getting clients off the back of your content, is be who you truly are at your core.
Yeah, 100%. You can tell what is a Quentin Tarantino movie. You can tell what a Christopher Nolan movie is. You can tell what a Steven Spielberg movie is just by watching it, just by seeing it. Like, there's certain like shots that they always do, or there's certain things, but that's their personality, that's their style, that's what they love. I would argue if someone gets a video from me, they can sort of maybe tell like, oh, that's sort of the style that Steven does quite a bit. It's sort of injecting your own personality into your content.
Well, so think about Joe. Joe has, we were talking about Joe the other day. Joe's one of our clients, and he said, I'd like to do a video with Steven. Steven's the other end of the country from him. There's videographers in Newcastle where Joe lives, but he wants to work with Steven because of your style and how you show up and how you do things. He's like, I love Steven's stuff. So it makes a big difference. And just like that is an expression of how you edit and you put content together. It is going to be the same in the fitness world. People will see your fitness content and connect with it and go, I've got to work with this person because of who you are. Lean into that. It is your superpower. And the sooner you start to believe it, the better, in my opinion.
Yeah, 100%.
Beautiful. All right. Well, Steven, where can people find you if they want to hear a little bit more from you or see more of your content and what you're putting together? Where's the best place to find you?
So I'm on Instagram, YouTube, and Facebook, sort of the main social media sites, and all of them are Shots by Steven, SHOTS by Steven, with an underscore at the end.
Steven, how do you spell Steven? It's a V.
That's a good point. I forget there's two ways. The better way is STEVEN, so with a V. So yeah, that's my handles. Yeah, go follow me. I'm grateful, but obviously, would love to hear from the listeners as well. It'd be great.
Perfect. And you've also just launched your own podcast. Where is that and what's it called?
Yeah, so that's on YouTube as well. I've thought of, I maybe not confirmed just yet, but I'm quite liking the idea of Chats by Steven as opposed to like, fancy. Going off a little bit of creatively there. But yeah, just Chats by Steven, that's on YouTube. And I've, very much on the grassroots right now, so it's all new to me. Doing this is also new to me, so it's been really eye-opening. It's been really great to do. But yeah, go subscribe to the channel there. That's also shots by Stephen too.
Beautiful. And we're going to do an episode on Stephen's podcast next week. I don't actually know when I'll be releasing this and when he'll be releasing that, so I have no idea if we're talking about that as if it's happening in the future and it's in the past now. But
Yeah.
we're going to go do an episode on that podcast. No idea what we're talking about, how we're going to lay it out, but we will cover something that I'm sure will be equally as valuable as today. If you do have any questions for either of us, as always, drop us a message. You can find me on Instagram, Jack Simons Official. Simons is spelled Symons. And you can ask me any questions. Again, same with Stephen. And the last thing that I'll say is if you've enjoyed this podcast and you want to see more of the amazing guests that we have on, make sure that you do share this and you let other people know about it, because the bigger the podcast grows, the more that we can get, incredible names on and get incredible guests on to give you free value. As always, I say I want to make this the best free resource that you have available to grow your online coaching business. And that only happens with you. So share this with another coach, share this with someone else who might find this valuable, because as we get a bigger audience and we grow more and more, we can attract bigger and better guests. And I will do my absolute best to get them to share every bit of knowledge they have with you to growing your business and how you can make that an absolute just life-changing business for you as well. So make sure that you are subscribed, follow in, give it a 5 stars, all that good stuff, and give this a share as well. It is the best way to see this grow. I appreciate every single one of you for listening in and listening to me and Stephen again today. And I will see you all on the next episode. We've got some really cool guests lined up. We've got a sales podcast coming on, which is going to be a really, really cool one. We've got a fantastic guest lined up for that, which is really exciting. She has turned over millions and millions and millions in sales. So I'm very excited for that one. We have got a guest coming on who is a nutrition expert, which is going to be really cool. And we've got a couple of other ones in the works at the moment. So yeah, some very exciting guests in the line. Anyway, thank you very much. And I'll see you all on the next episode.